Welcome everybody to Jazz and Liquor Center. We're here doing our old history project with one of the great masters of our music. Has played with so many of our great musicians. We're just honored that he's given us some of his time, the great Mr. Gary Bartz. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
I wanted to first just get a little history from you. I know your mother was a pianist, and she played piano.
She played piano.
She played piano. Okay. Did she play around the house, and how influential was that?
No, I did not grow up in a household with a piano. She had, but when she was younger, she was in a household with a piano. So that's where she learned how to play.
Okay. And did your family listen to jazz?
Oh yeah,
they did. Who?
Oh my goodness.
All the members of the family. Which ones?
Yes. Well, my uncle in particular, my father's younger brother, Leon Bartz. He's the one that had all the records. I would go by every Sunday. We'd go to my grandmother's house where he was living, and that was the highlight of the week for me because I could listen to these records. And they were Dizzy Gillespie records. They were Charlie Parker records. They were Louis Jordan. Initially, they were Louis Jordan records, and that caught me because Louis Jordan not only. And I don't even know whether it was the alto that got me, but I liked his humor and the music and the grooves.
The lyrics he would do, Saturday Night Fish Friday and stuff.
Yeah, and then the saxophone,
Of course.
So then I guess I had been listening to that, and then when I heard Charlie Parker records, then that did it, and not really even knowing what the instrument was. I made up my mind. I must have been about 6 years old. I said, I want to do that.
And you were listening
to myself.
To yourself?
Yeah.
And you said 6 years old is when you first heard Bird, like on records?
Yeah.
So that was a young age?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, that's why I know this music, the young people can hear this music.
Yes.
If I could hear it at 6, if Beethoven and Mozart can hear it at 3.
Exactly.
Music is something that you need,
Yes.
to expose young people to all the time.
Of course.
And so, so he had these records, and so it took me 5 years to talk them into buying me a saxophone.
5 years. That's a long time.
But the meantime, I was listening every Sunday, and then as I got older, I began to say, oh, we got to go get this new Charlie Parker record, and my dad would take me to the record stores, and they would order them because they knew I'm coming in to buy them. I would say, please order this for me. And so, but by the time I got the saxophone, I had kind of, my ears were open.
Yes.
But yeah, my uncle, he used to go to New York, come back with stories about seeing Dizzy Gillespie and different musicians, and I would just eat all of that up. So yeah.
And you, of course, brought up in the area of Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah.
There was a club called, I believe, the Club Tijuana.
That's the club. We were just talking about that.
And I know I've heard you before say that your father would take you sometimes down there, or you would go on your own. Would you be?
Well, no, I would go around, because I'd go around there every night.
Okay.
They're not going to take me, and I couldn't get in.
You couldn't get in.
The only way I could get in is if somebody did take me in.
Okay.
But I would go around every night to meet the musicians, like I met Lockjaw Davis, I met Johnny Hodges, tried to meet Bird, but he never came outdoors,
Okay.
And I just met a lot of musicians like that and would go around and listen and hang out.
And what age was that when you would start going club to?
Probably 13, 14.
Wow. Yeah. And seeing all those great musicians, Eddie Lockjaw Davis, and musicians of that caliber, what effect did it have on you as a young man, listening to them, listening to the different ways they play and the styles they played and the sound they had? What effect did it have on you as a young man?
I'm not sure what effect it had, other than the fact that whatever effect it had, I had already been infected. So I'm just going around there to get this disease. And so I would go around and I would talk to him. I remember talking to Johnny Hodges and asking him, different things about the saxophone.
And they would talk.
Yeah.
They were very soulful back to you.
Oh yeah, they were young people. Had I been older, maybe not. And I doubt that too. You know, you always encourage musicians.
Of course.
You know, and so no, they were very good. You know, I didn't meet anybody who I thought was rude.
Yeah,
you know.
they all came with love.
Yeah.
Also, of course, Baltimore has the great Royal Theater.
Oh.
And that's a great part of the country where you have there was still the Chitlin Circuit, and you have many of the great R&B groups. James Brown would play there for weeks on end, and people like that. Which performers or artists did you also see at the Royal Theater?
Everybody.
You must see a lot of big bands.
Everybody. I saw from Little Richard to James Brown and Original Flames to the what's the group? Harvey Fuqua.
Oh, and it's one.
It was one of those vocal groups.
I think I know.
But I saw the group with Marvin Gaye before Marvin even.
Oh, wow, okay.
I mean, I saw all of these. I saw one of my favorite blues musicians of all time, Jimmy Reed.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw Jimmy Reed perform there with a band, but also I remember seeing him one time, and he came out, because I always loved Jimmy Reed. He came out he had a hi-hat on this foot, had a bass drum here, he had his guitar, and he had the rack with the harmonica. And he sang, and he was a one-man band. And I mean, I've never gotten that image out of my head, and I never saw him do it any other time. But I just read his biography, and I know he did do that. So.
That must have been a place where you also saw big bands must have played there.
Oh yeah, big band. Duke Ellington.
So Duke there.
I don't remember seeing Count Basie, but Duke was definitely a part. Louis Jordan, of course, because I had to go see Louis Jordan.
Of course.
And Louis Jordan had the dancing, the dancers, beautiful ladies, beautiful brown-skinned ladies.
Of course.
Yeah, that was always a treat. But yeah, no, I saw everybody. Clyde McPhatter.
Just everybody.
Fats Domino, yeah.
And just a great
the Dells,
diaspora of the whole music from Duke to also what was happening to James Brown and people like that.
Yeah, so, and that's why I say this music is not compartmentalized. James Brown could have grown up right next door to John Coltrane.
He's a child of jazz,
and been great friends. But James Brown would have done the funk like he did it, and Train would have done giant steps like he did it, because it's no different. See, we see it as if it's a different. It can be different. We're not different, So it's all the same music, and that's why I don't like these terms.
I hear you. Also, this time, of course, you're starting to go to sessions, obviously, playing. Would your father escort you to some of the sessions?
Yeah.
So he would.
Yeah.
So that's a very beautiful thing. Your father, you had that support of your family.
I did.
As you were growing up and going out and checking out the music.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to ever sit in with some of the musicians? Sometimes you go to the sessions. Would you get a chance to sit in?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, I was just telling Cezanne that I met John Coltrane when I was about 14 years old.
Was that when he was with El Bostic?
No, he was actually with Bull Moose Jackson.
Bull Moose Jackson, okay.
He was with Bull Moose. And Benny Golson had to tell me this story because I didn't remember this. But he said, no, we met you, John and I met you. We came into this little club in Baltimore. We were down there to do a 2-week engagement with Bull Moose Jackson. And the second week got canceled.
Okay.
So they stayed in Baltimore, so they had time. They came out and they came to this session. They heard me play. And so, he said that, well, man, we went back raving about this little young alto player we heard that.
Wow.
So I was telling Sitan, I tease people. I say, well, Train knew about me before I knew about him. Because he hadn't joined Miles and all of that at that time, So, but then, of course, I met him later, with Miles, And, but yeah, no, I met a lot of the musicians.
And of course, you had a long relationship with the great innovative by Max Roach.
Oh yeah.
What age were you when you first met? Would that be around the same time?
Same time, because that's when I started going
out to the sessions and stuff.
I'd had a horn for 3 years, and so, that's all I'm doing. Everybody else playing baseball and basketball. I'm in there,
doing the scales, and the solos.
Yeah, and I would take lessons every week. I had a teacher, so I was learning how to read. And all that. But my ears was what guided me, and to this day that's what guides me. But I remember my dad took me to see Sonny Stitt.
Yes, sir.
And it was matinee because it was the easiest time for the kids to go.
So that would have been what time?
That would have been 54.
And what time of the day?
Yeah. No, about 3. Probably 3 to 6 would have been matinees, or maybe 2 to 5 or something like that.
And how many shows would they normally do in the day? Would they do like a morning show and a matinee?
Well, yeah, if they did the matinee, which the matinee might be 2 sets.
Okay.
And then they play again that night.
So
4 or 5 sets.
So they're playing
40-20s.
Okay. So they're playing from like maybe 12 to 12.
No, 12. No, that's early too for musicians.
So from about what time to what time?
I would say about 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah,
okay.
Never before that.
Okay.
Very seldom. But he took me to see the Comedy Club, is a famous club down on Pennsylvania Avenue, just a few blocks above the Royal Theater.
Okay.
And I'm listening to Stitt, and of course I love Sonny Stitt. I had all these records, with Dizzy, and him playing All God's Children. I'm trying to learn these cycles and stuff. And so while he takes a break and he comes back and he says, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, I understand we have a young man that has a horn and would like to come up and play." And I'm looking around, and my dad had sneaked my horn in the trunk of the car and took me down there unawares that he's going to do this. And so I went up and played with Sonny Stitt, and being the nice man that he was, he took me through all the keys on the blues. And fortunately, I didn't know one key from the other.
Okay, so you're just using your ears.
Didn't make me a bit of difference, and so I guess it impressed him, so we became lifelong friends.
Okay.
But he imparted some wisdom, much wisdom to me, but one thing he imparted to me that took me so long to really to start to really even understand what he was saying, which was about, he said, "Remember, young man, breathe from the diaphragm."
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's all he said. Didn't give any instructions or anything, so it took me many a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're going back to Max now. What age were you when you first met him?
About the same time. That would have been within a year of that.
15 you were? 16?
Yeah, 15, and he was working at a club called the Club Casino.
Okay.
Which was up the street from the Comedy Club. And I sat in with him. I don't know whether I asked or my dad asked, but he was playing, because this is Bird now, and I knew Cherokee, and he, so we played Cherokee, and so, I could play Cherokee. And once again, did not know a chord. I did not know one chord. That's why I moved to New York. That's why I ended up going to Juilliard, because I needed to learn my harmony and theory. But so I played Cherokee and whatever else he played, could always play the blues. Because my uncle also was good friends with Dinah Washington. And whenever she came to town, they would hang out. So, Max gave me his number. He said, well, I told him I'm moving to New York. I had to get out of Baltimore anyway. It's too racist.
Okay.
And so I looked him up when I moved to New York, and we became friends. Him and Abby used to invite me over for dinner once a week, on Sundays. And,
well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and so, yeah.
And who was in the band with Max? Do you remember at that time?
At that time was Clifford Jordan, because he became a lifelong friend of mine too. And I'm not sure. I think Julian Priester, also another lifelong friend. Bass, I'm not sure. It could have been Jimmy Merritt. Could have been Jimmy.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. I don't remember that.
Okay.
But that was the band.
That was the band. So 1958, you're about 17, and you come to Juilliard. Come to New York. What was that experience like first at Juilliard? Just being in that kind of environment for you, coming from Baltimore to this now conservatory situation. What was that like?
It was exciting. It was exciting because New York is always exciting.
Yes.
And we had always come to New York every summer, you know, and we'd always have to go to Birdland or Small's Paradise or somewhere like that. You know? So now I'm in New York. So I kind of know my way around a little.
Okay.
You know, I knew how to get to Birdland. I knew how to catch the subways, and I knew, you know, stuff like that. And so, you know, I'm enrolling in Juilliard, and in the line I met Gratian Monaker and Andrew Cyril.
Wow.
And we became really good friends, you know, to this day. You know, we became like the Three Musketeers. You see one, you see the other. And so Gratian is the one who actually taught me harmony and theory.
Wow.
Because the school, it was a European curriculum.
Of course, yeah.
They didn't even have a saxophone major. So, you know, I studied with Joe Allard, but it was not a major. I was a composition major, really.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, no, it was a very exciting time. And many people like Roland Hanna was going there.
They were studying there.
Addison Farmer.
Lee Morgan?
Arts from Lee was there, but I never saw him there.
Okay.
Who else was going there? Bobby Thompson.
Yeah.
No, it was a lot of people. Neil Sedaka.
Wow.
But there were many.
So there was a hub of just all kinds of different musicians.
And dancers, the greatest, some of the greatest dancers. That Jaime, who originated the role of in West Side Story. He was the lead of the Latin gang, and did the movie also. And yeah, it was a good time.
So 1958-59, you're in New York. Which places would you go and play? You said Birdland. What other clubs where you were able to, like, you know, develop and try and sit in and stuff?
Right.
Like that?
Mainly, I for some reason I met a lot of musicians and a lot of guys, and Andrew also lived in Brooklyn, so I would end up in Brooklyn a lot.
Okay.
And so the Club Coronet, Turbo Village.
Oh.
Actually, Turbo Village, I played one night 2 songs with Bud Powell.
Wow.
And, you know, I still have that feeling, because we used to see Bud all the time. We used to take him home and make sure he was all right. Give him $1, you know, and whatever, you know. As a matter of fact, the first time I met him was in the Club Continental, which was up on Nostrand. And there was this man laying on the table. He was just laying on the table. He was out. And so they were trying to get this guy out of here, the club owner. And one of the guys I was with, one of the younger musicians, said, "You can't throw him out, that's Bud Powell." And I said, "Oh," so that's the first time I met Bud, you know. So we, you know, got him together and took him home. Because he lived not too far from the Continental.
So he was living in Brooklyn at the time?
He was living with his dad, yeah, in St. Mark's.
Okay. So 1964, you go a bit further, you're about 23, 24, and you joined Max Roach's band. You would already have kept, of course, were keeping in touch with him those years in New York. So when did he say he wanted you to be in the, how did that come about that he wanted you to be in the band?
I'm not really sure, but I used to go around there and play chess, you know, because he was an avid chess player.
Yes, he was.
And I'd go by there and he'd kick my butt like 20 times in a row. You know, and I'd say, one more.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, one day, you know, he called me. I'm not sure whether he called me or it just asked me, you know, personally, but he did ask me.
Okay.
And, wow.
Yes. And who was in the band when you first joined?
Julian Priester was in that band, Ronnie Matthews, and who was playing bass? I'm not sure whether it was Reggie or it wasn't Jimmy. Later on it was Jimmy, because I was in a lot of different bands with Max, you know.
Yes.
But that particular band, I know, Bob Cunningham.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bob, because that was my roommate. We used to double.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
That was in Brooklyn you were living?
No, I was living in Harlem.
Harlem, okay.
Yeah.
Because Ronnie Matthews was Brooklyn.
Right, he's another Brooklyn.
And I think is Bob Cunningham in Brooklyn?
Well, he's actually from Cleveland, but he's lived in Brooklyn as long as I've known him.
Cool.
Yeah.
I see. So you're with Max for how many years that first time?
About a year.
About a year.
About a year.
Okay. And then, in that period, you're playing with Max, but then later on you also get to play with the great Bohemia.
Well, when I left Max, then Art, he called me.
And how did that come about, that art? Had he heard about you?
No, you know what happened?
What?
Well, my dad had bought a club. Him and two other friends bought a nightclub in Baltimore called the North End Lounge.
Okay.
And so I used to work down there a lot, you know. And I had led the band there, of course, you know, couldn't get fired, no matter how bad I was. But, and no matter how late I came in, which was often, I had a time problem as far as clock time.
I get you.
And my dad was a railroad man.
Okay.
And Max was like a railroad man.
Really?
So, but between the both of them, man, they drove me crazy.
Really?
You know, about this time. You're late, you know. I'm trying my best.
You're trying your best to get, yeah.
But I no longer do that.
Okay.
But, so art was actually, as a matter of fact, I worked at my dad's club with Max Roach.
Oh, wow.
We worked there.
Okay.
And I've got some photos from those days. And I just found a photo of Art Blakey at the club with my mother, because my mom just passed away in January.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
And thank you. And she, I was going through some photos, and somebody was saying, there's a picture of your mother, and we don't know who this man is. And it's Art Blakey.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So, but my dad called me. He said, look, Art's saxophonist is getting ready to leave.
Oh.
Maybe you should, because I was in New York, you know, I was still living, the whole time he owned the club, I was actually commute.
You would go back and forth?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he said, why don't you come down and sit in with the band?
Your dad's still on it.
Yeah, he's still on
that's
it, you know. So, and Lee was in the band. John Hicks who was a really good friend of mine, so he was trying to get me in the band anyway.
Okay. So that might have been the band with John Gilmore.
I took John Gilmore's place.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. And Lee was in it for a little bit.
Yeah, no, he was in the band the whole time I was there. Okay. For that period. Yeah. Which was actually the Sidewinder time, you know, because we had to play Sidewinder on every set.
In Boo's band?
Yeah.
So in the Jazz Messengers, you have to play Lee's hit?
We had to play that song every set.
Wow.
And it got to the point where we just played one chorus and got out of there. I mean, 5 times a night, man.
Yeah,
6
man, that's
times
hard.
a night.
That's hard.
Drove us all crazy, but I mean, he was getting paid.
That was his hit. But
and
that's
people
incredible.
Were coming to see that. They wanted to hear Lee Morgan. Oh, we want to hear that. You know?
And that's nice. But that's nice that Boo would, you know, he was like, it's his band, but Boo would like, yeah, it's your song. Play it too.
That's right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you took John Gilmore's place. And I know I have a record called Soul Finger, which is the one,
my first record
with the Jazz Messengers. And I think it's credited to Boo, but I think it's your tune, Freedom Monday.
Yeah, it is, man.
That's a when did you write that? I love that composition.
Oh, thank you. I probably wrote that while I was in school, which would have been 60s, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was trying to do songs that I had already written before I could get to the new material, you know, so because that was my first record.
Okay.
First recording ever.
Debut,
was that. And the funny thing, I had been to my first time out to California, which we drove out, and Booz had this, he had this stretch checker. It wasn't a taxi, it was like a limo, you know, that he used for the band to get around. And so we drove out, and Boo and Lee flew out because Lee had all this money that he was getting from the Sidewinder, you know. And so we left from Beefsteak Charlie's on 50th Street, on 50th. And because that's where everybody used to meet, you know.
Beefsteak Charlie's.
Just go in there and see. I would see anybody from Tad Dameron to Coleman Hawkins to Roy Eldridge. That's where all the...
That's where I was a hub.
Yeah.
On 50th.
Beefsteaks. And bands would leave there. They would drop people off there and coming back off tour. And so we left from there and drove straight out to Seattle, Washington. And this was in '65, before the interstate highways were complete.
Wow.
So we had many a detour, but we had 2 drivers, so we just drove straight.
Okay.
And we did that. Actually, there's a recording of that, because there was a radio show
Okay.
that they did on Friday nights. It could have been Friday and Saturday, but so we did it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Had a Monday off, and then we did a week. So we did 10 days in Seattle, and so they've got 2 weeks of recordings of that band, you know, which I have some copies of. And maybe one day they'll see the light. You know?
Yeah.
Then we went down to San Francisco for 2 weeks, and that was at the Jazz. What was it? Oh, I forgot the name of the club now. But then we went to Shelley's Manhole in Los Angeles, and we left 2 days before the riots in Watts broke out.
Wow.
And we could, in retrospect, you could see there was tension. We didn't notice it at the time, but afterwards, we said that's what we were feeling. And coming back, Lee Morgan had spent all the money that he had.
Gotcha.
So he had to drive back.
You had to drive back with you instead of taking the plane.
So that was funny. So we had a good trip. And also George Braith, I don't know if you're familiar with George. George had been stranded out there, and so he came back with us too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what year, how long did you play with Art Blakey?
That time was about a year.
A year.
And so when we got back, to finish that story, but when we got back, as soon as we got through the Lincoln Tunnel, or the Holland Tunnel, I'm not sure which one, I think it was the Lincoln. We got through the Lincoln Tunnel. Lee got out right on the other side of the Lincoln Tunnel, and we didn't see him again until the record date. So nobody knew where he was. Boo kept saying, man, you seen Lee? We got this record date. Nobody had seen him. We couldn't find him. We were looking for him. So Boo asked Freddie to come to the date. And Lee somehow or other got word, and so they both showed up.
Of course, yeah.
And that's why they both were
on the record. Yeah, I always wondered about that.
Supposed to be Lee.
I see. So Lee turned up, though.
He turned up.
So that's 1960.
That was 65.
65.
Yeah.
Okay, 65. Now, who did you play with? Who were you playing with after you were with Blakey? Like, who did you? Which other bands?
Well, even in the early 60s, I would go and play with Mingus, you know, with the Mingus Big Band. And that's where I met Eric Dolphy, Rahsaan Roland Kirk. Actually, Rahsaan had worked at my dad's club, so he knew me from there. He didn't know me, but I said, well, you worked at my dad's club, and then that's how we met. Lou Donaldson worked at my dad. You know, it was a big club down there. It was the big club. It became the big club. And so I started playing with Charlie Mingus workshop, which I didn't get paid, but that's okay. It was, I, like Art used to say, hell, you should pay me. And we started practicing together because Eric found out that I loved doing duets with people, and he did also, and we could never find anybody who wanted to do duets with.
Really?
You know, so he said, let's do some duets. So every Wednesday I used to go by Eric Dolphy's loft, and we would do these duets, these Bach fugues, and we'd find the hardest, because there's nothing written really for altos. It's mostly half notes and maybe a quarter note, maybe some eighth notes. That's 16s you'd see every now and then. So we ended up with oboe music, because there's a lot of oboe, and that's the same range, low, B flat, high F. And so we'd get these Bach fugues and all these things, and you know, every Wednesday we'd go down, and he'd have his whole array of horns, you know, all around, and we'd just play, and we'd say, "Ooh, you hear this? Do that again. Let's do that again." And it was just fun, you know.
That's it.
Yeah.
Did you ever personally record any of those duets?
No, I haven't. No.
So you, of course, you had you used to go to Mr. Dolphy's house every Wednesday. What kind of man was he? If you could put it into the context, even though he's probably hard.
Never saw him drink. Never saw him smoke. Never. Just a beautiful man. You know, just all about music, though. It's really all about music. And like I say, he always had his horns out whenever I came by. And I'm sure he didn't do that for me. I'm sure he always had them out, you know, so he could get up and see which one do I want to work with today, you know. And so, you know, but just a kind spirit, really a beautiful soul, man. Yeah.
and of course he was such an original. How do you think he dealt with the frustrations of being such a unique spirit and person in the music, and you know, people never really understanding how do you feel knowing him? He felt with those frustrations, or did he just?
I think he didn't even recognize that. Yeah. He, you know.
That's right. He was.
Yeah. He didn't recognize that. He was just doing what he did.
Doing his thing.
And doing his study, because he had a lot of what I call musical training books. You know, these etudes and things that you need to gain technique. And I noticed in his books, he left me some of the Marcel Murlet books that he left me. He said, well, I'm going to Europe, so I'm going to get some new ones when I go. So here, you have these. And he had marked off the dates that he got to certain tempos on them, you know, and so it started me to do that. And it just taught me, you know, it's just, you know, I was fortunate to be around some great musicians. I really was.
Do you have any of those books still?
I don't know where they are. I wish I did. I might have one of them, you know. But I had things, letters and books of Lee's and stuff. You don't think about that at the time.
Of course,
you know.
You don't.
And I've lived so many places.
Of course. So we move on a few more years, and you get the opportunity to play with Mr. Miles Davis. How had he seen you play around New York first, and how did that happen that he asked you to join?
I had been seeing Miles forever.
Okay.
You know, because like I say, when I was a teenager, I used to go see him as often as I could. I was actually there the night after he got beat up by the cop, and thinking he was going to be there that night, you know. But as I was coming down the steps, he was at Birdland, of course. That's where he got. And as I'm coming down, I said, "Oh, good, he's there," because you got 2 flights of steps to get down to Birdland.
Okay.
And so on the second landing, I'm hearing the trumpet. I said, "Oh, wow, he's here." You know, I came down, and it was not Adderley, but he was playing like Miles.
He could say, yeah. You know. So Nat was did he sub from okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I would see Miles at Birdland when I would hang out. I'd see him hanging at the bar with J.J. Johnson and. You know, see him and be around.
Just hanging,
yeah. But I never really knew him. You know, like I tell the story. I said, I met Miles many times, but he finally met me one night. You know, which is we were working at. I was working with Max Roach.
You working Max Roach,
and he was. We both. It was a double bill at Count Basie's.
Wow.
You know, in Harlem. It's still they still is part of history now. And I think it was a week. I'm not sure it was longer than a week, but so he was hearing me every night.
So double bill, Max
Roach,
okay,
and Miles Davis band,
and then
with Tony Williams and Wayne and Herbie and yeah.
So how? Just explain to us, from me, a younger cat, how would the sets work, and who would play first, just when they would have a double bill like that?
I'm not sure. I think we went on first.
Going first. About what time?
But it probably didn't matter, you know. But I remember one night I was already there when Miles pulled up, and that's the first time he spoke to me. He came up in his Lamborghini, and he blew his horn, and I knew that was him, and so I came up, and I walked over. I thought he said, "How you doing?" And that's it.
That's it.
So, but that's when I met him. That's when I say I met him. But I met him before. I'd spoken to him. You know.
And Count Basie's, for us, for younger cats who don't know, was a club that was owned, of course.
I guess it was owned by him. I know it had his name.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. It was on 134th and 7th Avenue, if I'm not, or Lenox.
Okay.
Either one of them. And that's where they had Monday night jam sessions. I used to go. Freddie Hubbard, because Freddie moved to New York in August of '58,
yeah.
And I moved in September of '58.
Okay.
So we met really early on, you know. And so we used to go to jam sessions together, and we would always hook up before the jam sessions. Okay, what we gonna play? We want to play something ain't nobody else playing, and so that we'd be the only horns.
Yeah, of course.
So we'd figure that out. And Andrew would come up, and Herbie Nichols, and everybody would be there, you know.
And how was the club situated? Was it how was it set up?
Well, you'd come in the front door, there were tables and things, as I'm trying to remember. I know the bandstand was like in the middle of the club, and it was kind of flat. It wasn't a big stage, it was kind of flat like that. And then there was the club all around, and there was the dressing rooms downstairs.
And you said you and Freddie would go to a lot of these jam sessions. You and Mr. Freddie Hubbard. When did you first meet him? Do you remember?
I'm not sure. Probably at one of the jam
sessions.
Yeah.
And did you, when you first heard him, did you know, you were like, oh, you know who was?
Well, I knew he was good.
You know he was good.
I knew he was good, and he had a knowledge of music beyond me at that time because he understood his chords and harmony.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. And there was I tell this story one time. He said, "Let's do Wouldn't You?" And so because I could hear everything, I would always say, "Whatever you want to play, you know, whatever." You know, I would never say, "No, I don't know that one," because I didn't know it. I didn't know it.
Okay.
You know, I thought I knew everything. But I found out he's calling, and so we're playing Wouldn't You, and I'm not ending in D flat every time. I'm ending in a whole nother key. And he's saying, no, it's G minor C, you know, and he's calling the chords out to me, and I didn't want him to know I didn't know chords. And so I'm saying, oh, what was that again? You know, and I
the message you can't really shake with. You got to know that one.
You got to know that one,
yeah.
Man. You got to have those two fives together. And so, but anyway, we did it. But I'm not even sure whether we did the song. I might have talked him out of it. But I tell you, and I was thinking about this the other night.
Mm-hmm.
There was an Art Blakey record that he played. I think he played Skylark.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew.
That's Caravan, I think.
That might be that.
Yeah. This is for Alpha. They're doing it too.
That's when I knew. Oh, he's moved to another level now.
Wow.
Because we all came there together.
So you came. I see what you're saying. Like you was your brother, and then you hear a record, and you go, "Damn."
Yeah. Whoa.
That's the same cat.
That's right. That's what happened, man. And I told him. I said, "Wow, you're on another level now."
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So moving on a little bit, you joined Miles's band.
Mm-hmm.
Did he just call you up, or how did that?
Well, you know what happened. I was working down at Slugs with McCoy Tyner.
Okay.
Benny Maupin and I were the horns.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure Miles came in because he was going to hire Benny Maupin because they had just done the Bitches Brew album. And he liked that bass clarinet, you know, and he wanted to use the bass clarinet. And, you know, that's what we all thought anyway. Yeah, and that next week he called me.
Something changed.
Yeah, he called me. But he did tell me one time, he said, alto is really my favorite saxophone. He said, you know, because Charlie Parker.
He played with Bird,
you know,
of course.
But he said he could never find the alto players that he really liked to play with, you know, and so I felt very fortunate, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who was in the band when you first joined with Miles?
Chick Corea, Keith Jarrett, Dave Holland, Jack DeJohnette, and Airto Pereira. Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of venues you guys were playing more? You guys weren't really playing clubs a lot. It was more bigger kind of.
Yeah, we'd do the Fillmore. You know, we did the Fillmore West.
Uh-huh.
We would do Paul's Mall and the Jazz Workshop in Boston.
Okay.
We did that. We were up there a lot. Lenny's on the Turnpike. Those clubs. We did the Cafe A Go-Go, which they had changed the name to Gaslight A Go-Go for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
We did that. Actually, Richard was living in Miles's, you know, the building that Miles owned.
Oh, okay.
And so whenever we were in town, Richard would come down to work on his routines.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so, but most of the time they were. See, you could tell when he had a band that he really liked because he would work more clubs because he wanted the band to get tight. And we got so tight, man.
Yeah.
You know? And one night he didn't show up. You know, we can go into that, but and so we were at Paul's Mall, and so they said the audience, and I've had people that were there that night that told me, you know, they came in, and so they made the announcement. Okay, Miles is not going to be here tonight, so everybody can go get their money, but the band's going to play anyway. So we played anyway, and a lot of guys, you know, a lot of the audience did come back. You know, which was very interesting to play that music without
Miles.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was different.
Okay.
It really was different. You know, you could see, but what it did for us was it showed us other ways we can go once Miles came back. You know.
Of course.
because he was the band leader, so he was always directing things, you know, with his horn. And I love the way he directs things without directing. You know, he's like a Zen master. You know, you direct without directing. You hear without hearing. You see without seeing. You know.
And of course, you mentioned that he first saw you with McCoy.
Yeah. Well, he actually had seen me with Max.
Seen you with Max, okay. And then, of course, you've had this. You speak about Mr. McCoy Tyner. I've been very blessed and fortunate over the last few years of being able to see you so many times with Mr. Tyner. What influence has he been on you musically, and how is he?
McCoy?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we don't have that much time.
But if you could just put into just a few words what he has taught you, spiritually and musically.
I guess and it was just it's just more reaffirmation in that, because he hears, I mean, he can hear some things. You know, his ears are like, his antennas are long. You know, they're way up in the sky. And so he makes sure, as Miles's was, yeah, and as every great musician, but for me, playing with McCoy, because I love John Coltrane so much, I could work on things that I felt I wanted to work on, and had someone who had that sensibility, who, you know, he knew what I was working on, because he was working on the same thing, and John was working on the same thing. So that made me grow. That helped me to grow.
Yeah. Well, we thank you so much for giving us your time. We love you. We thank you for continuing to be such a musical creator for us, and we hope and continue. I know you just celebrated your birthday.
Yes.
You're Libra.
Fellow Libra.
I mean, I'm gonna say your age because you look like 40. This man is 72. He looks like 35. So we thank you so much, and continue to just do what you're doing, sir.
I appreciate it. You continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you,
man.
God bless you.
God bless you.